A pleasant day to you, dear sisters. Today we continue our virtual retreat on discernment inspired by Psalm 119, verse 10. With all my heart, I seek you. I trust that you have been able to make the most out of the initial input we have received from our sister Lou. In her presentation, Lou talked about discreta caritas or discerning love. Isang pusong nagmamahal at nag-aaninaw. Somehow the word nag-aaninaw makes me think of ripples of water that you strain your eyes to look clearly through. The call is to show love not just in words but in actions as well. Pagmamahal na nakikita sa gawa. Discreta Caritas urges us to look into our current situation and ask the question, what is the more loving thing to do? What is the more Christ-like thing to do? How can I share more, give more, and be more? This presentation today is entitled Discernment of Interiority, Consolations and Desolations. Pero bago nating alamin ang kalooban ng Diyos at kung ano ang pinagagawa niya sa atin, kailangan nating malaman kung nasaan siya ngayon sa ating buhay. We have to sharpen our senses to ascertain the presence of God in our world and in our lives. Father James Martin, the author of the Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, said, "The path to finding God begins with the awareness of His presence, not simply the awareness of the ways you can find God, but an awareness that God desires to find you." What a beautiful thing to know about God. God desires to find me. It will never be a one-way search. Di tulad ng larong taguan nung bata pa tayo kung saan kawawa ang taya sa kanyang paghahanap. Finding God in all things begins with the discernment of God's presence. God is present everywhere. In all creation, nandyan ang Diyos. Hindi man natin siya makita o maramdaman. Mahahanap natin siya sa lahat ng bagay, saan man tayo magpunta. God has placed each one of us where we are for His sovereign purpose, in the hope that we might seek after Him. Sheep should know the shepherd's voice. How can we follow if we do not recognize it? Kung hindi natin kilala ang boses ng Panginoon, paano tayo tutugon? The more attentive we are to His voice and His proddings, the easier it will be for us to respond. The discernment of God's presence calls us to constantly look out and find where God is. Kailangan nating maging mapagmasid. We often miss the fact that He is alive and present in our lives because we are too preoccupied with our own activities. Nagmamadali tayo lagi. Nakatingin tayo sa malayo. Hindi natin siya napapansin. We have to constantly ask the question, where is God in my life now? Where is He truly alive and laboring? In what aspects of my life do I see and feel Him the most? Is He in the bird that sings on that flowering branch at morning? Is He in the background noise as I try to get things done? Is He there in my lack of me time? Or in the annoyance when I just get scene zoned and never get a reply? Does He speak to me in my mother's struggling with nothing to do? Does He sit beside me in my difficulty to forgive? Is He still waiting for me to find the answer to my long question, why was I born into Ligaya? Is He present in my struggle to trust the decisions of the people I love? Nakikita ba niya akong naghahanap ng ebidensya na may tinatago ang asawa ko? Nandyan ba siya sa lungkot ko at sa pagtatanong kung bakit hanggang ngayon wala pa akong anak? We are sometimes ready to fear that God's designs are against us. But for His own people, even that which seems negative is always for good. Like Saint Ignatius, with a habitual, proactive seeking and finding of God's presence and action in our lives, we too can receive the grace of being true contemplatives in action. In Jeremiah 29 verse 13, we are given the assurance, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Sa ating laging paghahanap, makikita natin siya. Discernment of interiority urges us to look in. We pay attention to our dominant feelings. Our consolations and desolations are the texture of our daily life. They run through our moods. It influences our dealings with people, our reactions to events and circumstances, even the choices that we make. In this pandemic that we are all in, it invites us to ask questions like, am I gripped with fear? Am I grateful for what remains? Am I able to keep calm? Consolation is always an experience of God's grace. It is easiest to feel close to God and discern consolation when these events are connected to God. For instance, it is a consolation that after many years of teaching Joy of Discovery Bible Study to brothers, sisters, and friends, I now serve in the same ministry with my daughter Mara. It is a blessing that I never even dreamt possible. Ebidensya ito ng pagmamahal ng Diyos sa akin. Kay buti ng Panginoon na sa aming pagtuturo, kapamilya ko na ang siyang nakinabang. How can you not feel the closeness of God and His faithfulness in an experience like this? Dinadaan-daanan niya lang ako lagi dati pag nagbabasa ako ng Biblia. Ngayon, hinihiram na niya ang mga libro ko. Indeed, this experience moves me to serve and praise God more. The bad spirits of desolation, on the other hand, pulls us away from God. It brings in the dark clouds and weighs us down. When I learned of my son Gian's cancer, I sobbed uncontrollably. How could this happen, Lord? Bakit ang anak ko? 6 months na lang, tapos na ang internship niya. Konti na lang, Lord. Doktor na siya. Kawawa naman siya, Lord. Ang sipag-sipag niyang magpuyat. He worked so hard to get this far. What did he do to deserve this? Have I not served you enough? It moved me to despair, to a feeling of self-entitlement. I began to question God's love for my son, for myself, and for my family. As a mother, I needed to appear strong. I needed to remain hopeful. Showbiz na showbiz ang pagpapakitang matapang. Ang pag-iiyak, panakaw lang, nakakapagod, nakakaubos ng lakas. Bad news doesn't always bring about desolation. When I found out that a close friend had been diagnosed of a psychological condition, instead of the news disturbing me with panic and filling me with sadness, it gave me eyes to understand and forgive. Akala ko sadyang makasarili lang siya palagi. Akala ko masakit lang siya talagang magsalita. Marami akong akala. Ang hindi ko alam, may sakit pala siya. A brother and a sister lost their jobs, but they turned it into an opportunity to unite and do things together as a family. The wife used her ability in the kitchen to cook for others. The son was in charge of delivery. Her husband prepared ingredients ahead of time and took care of cleanup. Hindi sila natinag. Hindi sila nawalan ng pag-asa. Ang sanay naging malungkot na kwento ay naging kwento ng pagtutulungan. What leads us to deeper love for God and neighbor is a consolation, while desolation is a moving away from the love of God and neighbor. The key word for consolation is hope. It gives us joy. It encourages and builds us up. It makes us fully alive. It makes us grateful. It gives us confidence and calms us down. Punong-puno ng pasasalamat. Payapa ang kalooban at hindi nawawala ng pag-asa. Saint Ignatius described consolation as a drop of water in a sponge. Calm and soft. The key word for desolation is despair. It drains our energy. It causes us to give in to panic and anxiety. It makes us angry and sad. It makes us fragmented. It sets false obstacles that makes us frustrated. Naguguluhan tayo, nahahati ang ating kalooban, sumusuko tayo agad, di pa nagsisimula, bigo na. To help one imagine desolation, Saint Ignatius described the action of a drop of water on a stone, splashing violently and hard. Consolation and desolation aren't just about feeling good or bad. You are disappointed that you didn't get that sale that you were hoping to close. The bad spirit tells you, walang bibili sa panahon na to. The good spirit encourages you to work harder, to make more calls, and sharpen your presentation skills. The good spirit says, kaya mo yan. You are concerned that the GCQ, MECQ, ECQ, and all the Qs is adding more barriers to the fulfillment of your state of life decision to get married. The bad spirit moves you to think, Lord, how can he find me where I can be found in this lockdown. Sandali na lang, Lord, menopause na ako. The good spirit, on the other hand, inspires you to keep calm, to put yourself in meaningful service. Hindi nagpapanik, hindi aligaga. We have to understand that God uses both our desolation and consolation to lead us to make good decisions. We examine our consolations and desolations, and we distinguish these spirits by noticing, owning, naming, and clarifying them. We check how they affect us and how they influence our choices. We ask the questions, are these feelings drawing me closer to my God, or are they drawing me further away from Him? Tinutulak ba ako ng mga damdamin na to palayo sa Diyos? How am I loving? Are these feelings making my way of loving more Christ-like or less Christ-like? Nakikita ba nila sa akin ang mukha ng mapagmahal na Diyos sa aking pakikitungo sa kanila? One sister was offered a global position in the company she worked with. It entailed moving to the regional office in Singapore and a very good pay increase. Malaking kagalakan sa kanya na siya ay nakitang may kakayahan para sa malaking responsibilidad na yon. Pero, payapa niya itong tinanggihan. It was clear to her that remaining in Manila with family and community was where God wanted her to be. What leads us to deeper love for God and neighbor is a consolation. Desolation, on the other hand, is a moving away from the love of God and neighbor. Consolations and desolations are important because they are the raw materials of discernment. They disclose so much about who we are. It tells us where our heart is and where our true treasures lie. They point us to what we value most, our great desires, even our disordered attachments. Tinuturo nito kung ano ang binibigyan natin ng halaga, ang ating mga adhikain, at ang mga pangangailangan nating wala sa lugar. They tell us about our deepest self and where it is engaged, and knowing that helps us to make something out of them. Pay attention. God is there. He is waiting for us to find Him. The Good Shepherd gives His life for the redemption of His sheep. Let us listen to His voice and reject what is not of Him. He is always looking out for you, always wanting to lead you to green pastures, wanting only good for you. Ang mabuting pastol ay naghihintay, nag-aabang, na salubungin ka, na akapin ka.